Status: active. Subject: Deus Ex Mankind Divided. Clearance: Tier 4 Augmented. I never asked for this. A fully augmented, partially loaded, chronically disappointed retrospective on Deus Ex Mankind Divided. Filed by Adam Jensen's Grievance Department. Playthrough complete. DLC crashed out. Total time invested, approximately 5 days of precious human life. Boot sequence. Intro. Loading. Please wait. Still loading. Why is it still loading? Let me paint you a picture. You're Adam Jensen, cybernetic demigod, connoisseur of trench coats, and a reluctant prophet of a dystopian future you absolutely did not ask for. You have blades in your arms. You can punch through walls. You can see through solid matter, turn invisible, and hack machinery from across the room using only your brain. You are, by any reasonable metric, terrifying. And yet, here you are, waiting 45 seconds for a loading screen again. Because you walked into the wrong room, triggered a guard's AI, and now you're watching a spinning golden triangle while contemplating the existential horror of having chosen the Ghost achievement on a game that runs like a patient with 3 augmentations too many and a CPU that's actively filing a workers' compensation claim. The game crashed again. I haven't finished the DLC. Welcome to Deus Ex Mankind Divided. A game that is, by turns, genuinely brilliant and breathtakingly squandered. A game that takes one of the finest cyberpunk RPGs ever made, Deus Ex Human Revolution, stares it dead in the eye, and then releases a spiritual expansion pack at full AAA pricing while asking you to unlock story content through microtransactions like it's 2013 and we're all somehow okay with this. I am not okay with this. I invested 5 days of my finite human life. Let's talk about it. Classified dossier. Key controversies. Intro. The pre-launch tire fire. A brief history of bad ideas. Before a single civilian in Prague was needlessly alarmed by your parkour, before you hacked your first keyboard by accident mid-firefight, Mankind Divided was already doing damage. Square Enix and Eidos Montreal arrived at launch dragging a trail of public relations disasters behind them, like a man with rocket legs who's just tripped over a parking cone.
I'm Ryan McCaffrey for IGN News. Square Enix has announced the cancellation of its highly controversial Deus Ex Mankind Divided pre-order program. Got you there for a second. First revealed alongside the release date, the Augment Your Pre-Order program let people pick what pre-order bonuses they would receive among a handful of different options, with different tiers opening up when higher overall pre-order numbers were hit. For example, the first tier offered 3 in-game packs, such as a Classic Pack or Enforcer Pack to choose from. And if enough people pre-purchased Deus Ex Mankind Divided, Square Enix promised to release the game 4 days early. It seems the wave of backlash the company received convinced it to rethink its position, however, as the system is no more. A blog post explains all the incentive content will now be available to anyone who pre-orders or buys a Day 1 edition of the game, while the release date will remain locked for February 23rd. For more on everything in the world of Deus Ex, keep it tuned right here to IGN.
Spectacular, baffling, and entirely self-inflicted. Incident log. Pre-launch controversies. Critical. Augment Your Pre-Order. Square Enix launched a tiered crowdfunding-style pre-order scheme where the game would unlock progressively more content depending on how many people pre-ordered, and they promised to release the game 4 days early if pre-orders hit a target. The gaming public collectively responded with the kind of fury usually reserved for disk-locked content on cartridges. The scheme was swiftly canceled, which is the corporate equivalent of testing the smoke alarm by setting the building on fire and then acting surprised when you have to use the extinguisher. Severe. Mechanical apartheid. the marketing team decided that the most resonant metaphor for the game's segregation of augmented humans was to invoke the South African apartheid, a real, documented, monstrous historical atrocity responsible for decades of systematic dehumanization, violence, and suffering. Attaching this to a video game about robot arms was received about as well as you'd imagine, and then slightly worse. Severe. Aug Lives Matter. Promotional art bearing this slogan arrived during a period of intense national conversation about the real Black Lives Matter movement. The optics were, charitably, catastrophic. Less charitably, it felt like the marketing team had looked at one of the most urgent civil rights movements of the decade and decided, yes, this is the aesthetic we need for our cyberpunk shooter. The backlash was immediate, vocal, and deserved. High. In-game microtransactions. A full-priced single-player game with microtransactions for items that are single-use. To be clear, the items are functionally pointless, the game is beatable without them, and yet the audacity of including them at all in 2016, after all the pre-order chaos, was a masterclass in not reading the room. Moderate. Abrupt ending/scope. Players finished the game and discovered they hadn't actually finished the game. They'd finished the first half of a game that apparently forgot to be made. This will be discussed at length, at considerable, passionate, almost therapeutic length. Historical record, 2011. The ghost of human revolution haunting every corridor. Let's rewind. 2011. Deus Ex Human Revolution arrives and does something remarkable. It makes a beloved, canonically 2000s-flavored PC classic relevant again without making a fool of itself. Great characters you actually care about, an overarching conspiracy that escalates with genuine momentum and arrives at a satisfying multi-choice climax. Mechanics that welcomed the stealthy ghost runner, the aggressive shotgun maniac, the hacker who never fires a single bullet, and the sociopath who collected every EMP grenade within a 10-mile radius. Yes, the boss fights were a well-documented disaster, outsourced, poorly designed, antithetical to every playstyle the game built around, but they were forgivable hiccups in an otherwise brilliant achievement. Human Revolution was a complete meal. Courses arrived in order, you left satisfied, maybe slightly full, possibly philosophical about transhumanism. The story of Adam Jensen reached its destination. His arc was finished. His tragedy was told. The themes about bodily autonomy, corporate power, the ethics of augmentation were explored with intelligence and specificity drawn from real-world anxieties, real politicians, real institutional rot. The original Deus Ex had the audacity to name actual organizations, actual figures, to root its conspiracy in the texture of reality. Deus Ex Human Revolution followed that tradition. Human Revolution had a story that was clear, characters that had depth, plots, character arcs, conclusions. Mankind Divided is great as far as the tools from Human Revolution being fleshed out. The scope has been drastically shrunken. Drastically. So here is the question that will haunt this essay, like Adam Jensen haunts Prague's ventilation systems. How did it take half a decade to release what is essentially an expansion pack? 5 years. 5 years during which games like The Witcher 3, Dark Souls 3, Dishonored, and even the rebooted Hitman, a game that shares Mankind Divided's love of systemic stealth sandboxes, all shipped, thrived, and raised the bar considerably. What did Eidos Montreal produce with that time? A game that feels, as one reviewer put it, like someone handed you a book that had been torn in half. The half you got was well written. Without the other half, the experience is functionally meaningless. Mission analysis. Prague. One city, many problems, 0 bars. In Human Revolution, the hub structure breathed. You moved between cities, Detroit, Hengsha, and each hub represented a new chapter in a widening conspiracy. The world grew with you. Mankind Divided contrasts this to a single hub, Prague, a gorgeous, rain-slicked, beautifully realized city that you will be absolutely sick of by hour 12 if the game hasn't crashed first. Prague evolves between missions, yes. The political climate tightens, police presence shifts, graffiti appears, but you can access almost the entirety of it from the very beginning. There's no sense of discovery, no expanding horizon. Returning to it becomes a commute. It becomes the office. And the forced, repetitive travel between the game's two Prague districts, Prakashka and Utelek, with their interminable loading transitions, is the exact flavor of gameplay loop that makes a person question their life choices while staring at a golden triangle for 45 seconds. User report. A lot of times I had to restart the game because it wouldn't even finish loading. A player on PC, presumably in therapy. And here's a delightfully absurd detail that crystallizes the world-building mismatch perfectly. You can scale buildings in full view of multiple police officers who respond to this with the urgency of a golden retriever watching a balloon float away. You can steal beer from refrigerators. You are a post-human super soldier, and your primary activity is walking. Prague, for all its visual splendor, doesn't quite align with the cyberpunk aesthetic either. The neon-soaked nocturnal sections are strong. The Utelek district is genuinely excellent, and London is the best location the game offers. But a city without a single bar, in a country historically famous for beer culture, is either an oversight or a metaphor for the game's overall relationship with satisfaction. Compare this to what other games in the genre were doing. Dishonored 2, releasing the same year, offered two full playable protagonists, each with distinct skill trees, across a diverse series of intricately designed levels that rewarded every possible approach. Deus Ex at its peak, the original, had an entire world's worth of paranoia to navigate. Mankind Divided has Prague, and Prague has loading screens. System diagnostics, technical failures. The PC port, a crime scene. Let us discuss the technical situation because it deserves its own chapter, its own support group, and possibly its own war crimes tribunal. The PC version of Mankind Divided shipped in a state that can generously be described as unfinished and less generously described as a shame for this studio. The graphics are legitimately impressive, a genuine step up from Human Revolution's golden-tinged palette, which makes the performance situation even more infuriating, like being handed a masterpiece painting that periodically catches fire. Steam discussions from launch document crashes across every conceivable hardware configuration. NVIDIA, AMD, it didn't matter. The game developed a reputation for overheating CPUs, refusing to complete loading sequences, and crashing mid-DLC with the frequency of a man with malfunctioning augmentations walking into a police station. Players forced to drop resolution from 1440p to 1080p just to achieve basic stability. Players who completed the main campaign but could never, not once, access the DLC content they paid for. Reports from the Steam community confirm crashes across both NVIDIA and AMD hardware configurations. 10 years after release, the game can still not run at maximum settings on hardware that was considered top tier at launch. This is not a badge of honor. This is a technical liability. The game offers 3 difficulty settings and uses clever naming in the Deus Ex tradition. Give Me Deus Ex, Nightmare, must be unlocked by completing I Never Asked for This, Hard. This is a nice touch. The fact that no achievement exists for completing either, while Doom 3, a game from 2004, correctly awards achievements for every difficulty tier, is the kind of detail that suggests nobody in quality control ever played the game from beginning to end on a single machine without incident, which, given the crash rate, may literally have been true. Narrative assessment. Story failure. 90% setup, 10% anticlimax, 100% cliffhanger. Here's an experience many players share. You're playing Mankind Divided, doing missions, building toward what feels like the midpoint of Act 1, the narrative accelerating, the conspiracy thickening, the augmented underworld of Prague revealing its complexity, and then the credits roll. Not metaphorically, literally. The credits roll, and you sit there making the face of a person who has just watched a film that ended during the trailer. All this build-up, and you think you're about to begin Act 2, or Act 3 if the scope is smaller than Human Revolution. Then you get the New Game Plus screen and realize the game is over right when it was about to begin.
Human Revolution ran approximately 40 hours on a thorough playthrough. Mankind Divided lands closer to 20, and those 20 hours are, not to put too fine a point on it, padded. The forced back-and-forth travel across Prague, the deliberate pacing of the early game that exists to justify the map's existence, the side quests that drift into the narrative like well-intentioned non-sequiturs, all of it buying time for a main story that peaks, gestures toward its own climax, and then concludes. The ending is, by common report, your choices read back to you by Picus News. If you have played Human Revolution, its 3 philosophical ending monologues, each representing a genuinely distinct vision of humanity's future, and then experienced Mankind Divided's conclusion, the whiplash is considerable. 2 meaningful choices in the entire game, one that actually changes anything, a cliffhanger that introduces a villain with enormous implications and then refuses to follow through, a juggernaut collective subplot that opens more questions than it answers, a partner character whose true allegiances the game is far too coy about, and Jensen himself, who is responsible for his augmentations exactly. The game hints at this revelation with enormous ceremony and then declines to provide it. Unresolved narrative threads, logged queries. Who were the people participating in the Illuminati conspiracy?
Interpol was more capable than we anticipated. They have a new augmented agent by the name of
Adam Jensen,
who we believe may have had external help, possibly by the Juggernaut Collective or even Janus directly.
We're looking into it, but
All that is speculation at this point. Let's find out more and reconvene later this week. Thank you, everyone. That'll be all.
It's your own fault.
I'm aware of that, Doctor.
Elizabeth sends her regards.
Report.
Overall, the subject seems quite well adjusted despite the massive traumas he's experienced, and his memories are still consistent with the program. He is remarkably stable.
Excellent. How close is he to contact with Janus?
Very.
It's only a matter of time.
We receive names, we meet none of them. What exactly happened to Jensen, who is responsible for his augmentations, heavily hinted at in the cliffhanger, not answered? Who is your partner really? What are their actual loyalties? What is Janus's true identity within the Juggernaut Collective? The cliffhanger scene, the woman in that final moment, why is she involved? Why do we not confront her? Why does the game end? The Illuminati's specific plan for the Naturals, outlined, implied, then abandoned as a plot thread. The game's Metacritic score of 83 has become something of a meme among its detractors.
83 for a game that reviewers themselves noted felt like half a product, that shipped in a broken technical state, that ended mid-sentence. The suspicion is that reviewers, correctly charmed by the gunplay, the hacking, the level design genius, the augmentation system, and the sheer density of the Prague sandbox, awarded points for what the game was doing well, which is real and genuine, and perhaps underweighted what it was failing to do at all. Conclude. Augmentation Review, Gameplay Systems. The inventory system and other forms of self-harm. Let's give the game what it deserves. The core systems are good. They are genuinely, unambiguously good. Being able to pick up boxes, multi-tools returning from the original game so you can occasionally sidestep the hacking minigame, which is fine in principle, and brain liquefying in extended practice, like a Sudoku puzzle stapled to your augmentation menu during a firefight. The weapon variety is excellent, an enormous spread of firearms, multiple ammunition types, tactical options for every approach from pacifist hacker to walking armory. Remote hacking as a new augmentation is legitimate brilliance. It opens spatial possibilities that feel genuinely new. I was sent into the ball-crushing chamber where I would pick up everything and inevitably have to drop the 300 EMP shotgun shells I wasn't using. There is so much tiny crap to pick up that can change the game, so it's important you pick everything up, but then you will have to suffer picking up 800 types of ammo you won't use. The inventory system, in response to this abundance, behaves like a hoarder's garage that someone has been slowly filling with items from a different game. Every ammo type occupies space. Every weapon variant demands to be considered. The game provides options with one hand and punishes you for engaging with them with the other. It is a system that wants to reward preparation and instead rewards the specific personality type who enjoys cataloging small objects. The new augmentations present a different problem. The power curve is broken in both directions. The Titan armor makes you nearly unkillable in ways that remove tension. The reflective camo stealth augmentation trivializes large sections of the game, and because ghost runs are a core experience, this trivializes the game. Invisibility, meanwhile, has been kneecapped from human revolution to the point where it functions primarily as a laser tripwire bypass tool. Players who poured Praxis into it expecting the tactical invisibility of HR found themselves with a brief shimmer and a deep sense of regret. And then there is the matter of boss fights, or more precisely, the singular solitary boss fight, Viktor Marchenko. That's it. That's the list. Human Revolution, for its all famously bad outsourced boss encounters, at least had the structural ambition to include several narrative confrontations that crystallized the themes of each act. Mankind Divided has one, and it is, by most accounts, anticlimactic to the point of being a punchline. Other antagonists can be neutralized through stealth or dialogue, which sounds progressive until you realize that the entire game can be beaten in under 6 hours with no moral consequences whatsoever is not a feature description, it's a confession of depth failure. The map navigation adds insult to injury. It marks destinations with the confidence of a GPS that has never been to Prague, guiding you to the correct district and then shrugging. Players on the hardest difficulties, where hand-holding is deliberately minimal, which is correct, report standing in the precise location the map indicates, staring at nothing, wondering if they've missed a wall or a floor or their own will to continue.
Immersion failure. Player agency. The game that doesn't trust you. Deus Ex's foundational promises is player agency, the idea that your intelligence, your preparation, your lateral thinking will be rewarded by a game that respects your ability to figure things out. Mankind Divided gestures at this philosophy and then repeatedly fails to honor it. Players who pieced together narrative developments before scripted terminal messages, cutscenes, and exposition that assumed they hadn't noticed the thing they'd already noticed.
The game treats its audience with a condescension that sits uneasily with the intelligence of the systems surrounding it. Conversations between Jensen and Quest characters have an improvisational chaos to them. Tones shift mid-sentence, emotional registers collide without logic, parting lines arrive as though the previous exchange never happened. Voice acting that sounds recorded in isolation from the rest of the dialogue, because recordedly it was. The animations don't match. The lip sync is its own entertainment, a comedy of augmented faces struggling to keep pace with audio that is doing something else entirely. And when you return to Prague between missions, those conversations reset. NPCs greet you as strangers, the texture of relationship dissolved. Note: the library contains the same book, repeated endlessly. The street NPCs cycle through approximately 3 lines of dialogue. The cardboard boxes and traffic cones, and specifically, inexplicably, traffic cones, appear with the regularity of a developer who ran out of time on asset creation and made peace with it. Comparative analysis, genre standing. Where Mankind Divided stands among its peers. The immersive sim genre, if we're being precise about where Deus Ex lives, is a demanding neighborhood. Dishonored 2012 established that you could build a complete, thematically resonant, mechanically diverse stealth action experience with a satisfying narrative arc in a single cohesive game. Dishonored 2 improved upon it. Prey 2017 demonstrated that the genre's appetite for systemic complexity and environmental storytelling was still very much alive and capable of execution. Even Hitman's 2016 episodic reinvention, a game explicitly structured around returning to the same sandbox repeatedly, understood that it needed to provide escalating content, not just one sandbox and a vague promise of more. Against these contemporaries, Mankind Divided occupies a confusing position. Its moment-to-moment systems, the hacking, the dialogue approaches, the environmental traversal, the augmentation builds, remain among the most sophisticated in the genre. The Prague sandbox, taken purely as a play space, is a genuine achievement in level design density. Eidos Montreal builds worlds the way other studios build set pieces, and compared to most non-Deus Ex games, it remains a superior experience in terms of raw mechanical imagination. But the original Deus Ex 2000 was doing something that neither Human Revolution nor Mankind Divided fully recaptures. It was making a political argument about the real world. Not a metaphorical one, not a mechanical apartheid one. It named actual institutions. It implicated actual power structures. Its conspiracy was a commentary, and its commentary had teeth. Mankind Divided's Aug Lives Matter marketing invoked this tradition and then reduced it to aesthetic, a look without an argument. The heavy-handed metaphors were handled with the lightness of a punch through a reinforced wall. Falls short of what came before? In scope? In narrative ambition? In thematic courage? Yes. In raw moment-to-moment enjoyment of being a cybernetic ghost in a beautifully realized city? Genuinely no. Which is precisely what makes this so frustrating. The bones are extraordinary. The building was never finished. Final assessment. Score breakdown. Numbers that hurt to type. One reviewer put it with the precision of a man who has been personally wronged. If the game were a full game and not half, it would start at a 10 and go down from there. For me, it started at a 5 and ended at a 2. That trajectory, hope collapsing into disappointment, is the Mankind Divided experience arc, in miniature. Story, 3 out of 10. Gameplay, 6 out of 10. Graphics, 5 out of 10. Music, 5 out of 10. Loading screens, infinity. Feeling of completion, 0 out of 10. PC stability, 1 out of 10. Existential emptiness at credits, 10 out of 10. This is not a game you recommend at full price. This is not even a game you recommend at half price without the caveat that you are receiving half a game at half the price, with the other half apparently being sold as DLC. DLC you may or may not be able to complete, depending on your hardware's relationship with the game's stability settings. Under $10 on a modern machine with the relevant patches applied, with your expectations calibrated to gorgeous broken promise of a cyberpunk sandbox, yes, absolutely. Play Prague. Hack the keyboards you meant to vault over. Watch the lip sync dissolve in real time. Experience the ending and sit with the silence. Bonus transmission. Additional talking points. The Deus Ex franchise needs a third game in this continuity, but one that has studied the mistakes of its predecessors with the seriousness of a Tier 4 augmented detective. Not a sequel to an incomplete story, a conclusion. The difficulty titles are genuinely fantastic. Give Me Deus Ex and I Never Asked for This are better names than the games that contain them deserve. They should have achievement support. The Utelek complex, City of Golems, is the best section of the game, and the one that most feels like the Deus Ex of popular memory, desperate, layered, politically alive. The Cult of Personality side quest is the one that most embodies the game's writing problems, promising premise, hollow execution. The Harvester, conversely, is actually good. These coexist in the same game. The good ending and the bad ending differ primarily in what Picus news anchor reads back to you. This is a sentence that should not be possible to write about a Deus Ex game. The fact that the game's conspiracy never allows you to confront any of its primary architects, the people actually named, is a structural failure so basic it suggests the game was shipped mid-outline. Microtransactions in a single-player game in 2016 in the same launch window as the Augment Your Pre-Order disaster is a communication strategy that deserves academic study. Jensen's voice remains magnificent. Michael Rosenbaum's Jensen is still one of gaming's great taciturn protagonists. He deserved a complete game. He still does. A series that once warned about corporate consolidation of reality is now a cautionary example of corporate consolidation of a game. There is poetry in that, if you squint. Transmission ends. Mankind Divided is a game that contains one of the finest cyberpunk sandboxes ever constructed, wrapped around a story that forgets to finish, sold at a price that implies completion, on a platform that implies it will run. None of these implications were fully honored. Adam Jensen did not ask for this. You, the player, should at least ask before you buy. Filed from Prague, where it is always raining, and the loading screen is 45 seconds away.